All right. It is a happy Sunday. You are listening to the tunes of Sabby. Down here at the pawn shop. It's the only way to shop down here at the pawn shop. Doobie-doobie-doo.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Sunday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on Rockfin, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. I hope you had a great Saturday. We have some pretty interesting stories to discuss tonight. I'm sure some of you are probably like, it's always interesting stories, Sabby. You always say that. Yeah, but today's a little bit different. One of the stories I'm going to talk about, I'm not even sure you guys are familiar with this case, but there have been new revelations that have happened in reference to the Newburgh 4. So we're going to get into that. I'm excited to talk about that case. We have other stories as well. So I want to go ahead and start off by shouting out everyone who is a Sabby patron. What's up, guys? Thank you all so much for your support. You're holding down the fort over here. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, sabinators, there's Sabsters. Don't forget about the Sabbies in the house. There's also members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Okay. So I do have a hard stop at 7. So I do want to make sure I stay on schedule here. So yeah. Thank you so much for the super chat, Oz. What's going on? Oz says hashtag impeach Biden, hashtag impeach Congress. Now I totally feel you there, Oz. I totally feel you. We've got a lot to get into today. I do have that hard stop at 7 because it is Sunday. Usually I shout people out in the chat, but I'm going to try to want to make sure I get through all the stories. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the thumbnail to show you what we are discussing today. Should be a pretty interesting conversation. Tonight, we are discussing Glenn Greenwald versus Bernie Sanders. Glenn has delivered quite a punch there in reference to Bernie Sanders. But I think this is an issue that we really need to pay attention to because, again, for the love of God, you have to stop the hero worship. You have to look at what these politicians actually do, especially when it comes to legislation versus what they say. And Glenn Greenwald is calling it out. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Max Blumenthal calls out RFK Jr. You know, everybody's hot. Everybody is hot. Max is pissed. Glenn is pissed. But we're going to get into that discussion there, what Max Blumenthal had to say in reference to RFK Jr. And I'm also coming with some receipts here to show you that what Max is saying is correct and what we should be paying attention to. We're also going to discuss Gen Z for Change staged events. Yes, I called this out on Twitter and I received some flack from some people I will accept apologies via DM or email, FYI, because I knew what I was talking about before I made the comment that I made. We're going to get into that. That organization is not what you think it is. And we're also going to discuss Newburgh 4 alert, a huge story that I hope more people talk about. I do believe also that Due Dissidence is going to cover this story tonight as well. So I know at least two of us are going to be talking about this story, but this is huge, huge news. And I actually want to go ahead and get started with that story. So a while back, there were a group of 4 men that were arrested and charged and imprisoned for what later would be described as an FBI trap. Now, this was years ago, back in 2009. Today, now, they are actually releasing 3 of those men. So I want to start from the very beginning. I want to start with what happened to them in the first place so that you understand why they were imprisoned to begin with. And I also want to tell you that I want you to seriously focus on the fact that these men were targeted. These were not just 4 men that just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were targeted by the FBI, and the FBI preyed on poor Black men as their target. So let's go ahead and get started with that story, the Newburgh 4. So I want to start with the arrest in 2009. These are the men. Peyton, Cromitty, and Williamses were arrested in 2009 during a period of heightened public and law enforcement concern about the threat of terror strikes within the U.S. by supporters of foreign extremists. So these men were accused of being foreign extremists. Was that true, or were they set up? It goes on to say officials portrayed Cromitty as the ringleader of a chilling plot among extremely violent men loyal to a Pakistani terrorist group. Though the government later decided not to present any evidence about foreign terrorist organizations at trial. A court complaint described him as a man seething with anti-American and anti-Semitic sentiment and eager to translate those feelings into action. Prosecutors said the defendant spent months scouting targets and securing what they thought were explosive and a surface-to-air missile, aiming to shoot down planes at the Air National Guard base in Newburgh, New York, and blow up synagogues in Riverdale in the Bronx. They were arrested thereafter, allegedly planting bombs that were in fact packed with inert explosive supplied by the FBI. But were those explosives actually real? We're going to get into all of this because this goes to show you, I've told you this before, how they target certain people. Relatives said the 4 men were down on their luck after doing prison time. The men's lawyers raised questions about entrapment, a legal defense that argues people were enticed into illegal conduct they would not have otherwise committed. Let's go on. Defense lawyers said a federal informant, Shahid Hussein, tried to stir up the men with rhetoric and chose targets, offered hefty payment, bought the defendant's groceries, and provided the fake bombs and missile. So again, this Shahid Hussein person, this was basically someone who was a part of the FBI. Notice that it said he provided them with fake bombs and missiles. They weren't real. And he did this by offering them things that they actually need: money, food. So they targeted poor Black men, set them up with this particular crime, and sent them to jail. Were they really extremists? Let's go on. Jurors deliberated for 8 days before convicting the men in 2010. 3 years later, they lost an appeal. A possible phone number for Hussein rang unanswered on Thursday night. Hussein worked with the FBI on other stings, including one that targeted an Albany pizza shop owner and an imam, and involved a loan using money from a fictitious missile sale. Both men, who said they were tricked, were convicted of money laundering and conspiring to aid a terrorist group. A few years later, Hussein was in the public eye again when a stretch limo crashed into Royal Shikari, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, New York, killing 20. Hussein owned the limo company operated by his son, Newman Hussein. After it emerged that the limo failed a safety inspection a month before the crash and that the driver did not have a commercial license, Newman Hussein was charged with criminally negligent homicide and manslaughter. His lawyer blamed a repair shop for the vehicle's problems and said his client was being treated like a scapegoat. Newman Hussein was convicted this May and served 5 to 15 years in prison. Now, let me go up here just a second. This article is from The Guardian. So you see it says here, judge orders release of 3 of the Newburgh 4 and accuses the FBI of trolling for terrorists. So this goes back to something we've talked about before, and I have another article and a clip I want to show you as well, that they specifically target certain groups. They tend to go after people that are poor, oftentimes people that are Black or people of color, people who need something, people who need money, people who need food, people who are desperate. And they set them up. This is considered entrapment. They'll set them up, whether it's to be a terrorist, etc., or with whatever else they're looking to fulfill at that point in time. Next thing these guys know, they're arrested and they're in jail. For what? Now, I want to play you the clip from NBC where they announced that 3 of the men are actually going to be released. Listen to this.
A victory in court for 3 men convicted in a terrorism sting more than a decade ago.
Police arrested the men last night as they were allegedly planting what they thought were real bombs outside a Jewish temple.
A federal judge ordering the release of Anta Williams, David Williams, and Laguerre Payne, 3 of the men known as the Newburgh 4, arrested for a plot to blow up synagogues in New York City and shoot down National Guard planes in upstate New York.
The suspects allegedly conducted surveillance and took photos of possible targets.
In a scathing decision, U.S. District Judge Colleen McMahon accusing FBI agents of trying to arrest petty criminals by radicalizing the men to participate in a plot she called an FBI-orchestrated conspiracy. McMahon adding, quote, the real lead conspirator was the United States.
That sounds like strong language, but it's just a pure description of the facts of this case.
The judge also accusing the FBI of using a, quote, villain of an informant to prey on the poor, then manipulate the men to commit a fake crime in exchange for cash, materials, and even groceries.
You see what they just said? They preyed on the poor. This is usually what they will do.
The defense is certain to raise questions about the informant and whether these men were duped.
Every step of the way was all the FBI. These guys they had no driver's licenses. They couldn't find Google Maps of where these targets are that the FBI informant told them to use. I mean, they came up with not one single part of this plot. It was all the FBI.
That FBI informant, Shaheed Hussein, who made headlines again when a stretch limo operated by his company crashed in rural New York, killing 20 people.
Manslaughter in the second degree.
Hussein now serving a 5 to 15-year prison sentence for that crash. We have not heard back from his lawyers.
The FBI says this man, James Crimity, was the alleged ringleader.
In the Newburgh case, the federal judge who granted the release also accusing Hussein of recruiting James Cromity, who was believed to be the ringleader of the terror plot.
We think that both Mr. Cromity and the others, number one, never should have been arrested, never should have been convicted by a jury. And we had certainly hoped that on appeal, many, many years ago, their convictions would have been reversed.
He was not included in this compassionate release request, but the attorney who represents him says he's confident Cromedy would be entitled to the same relief.
Late justice is better than no justice.
As for the Williamses and Payne, their 25-year sentence is pulled back to 90 days, giving lawyers and officials time to prepare for their release, according to the judge. Their attorney hoping for more compassionate releases in the future.
I think that.
Let me pause here for just a second because there's something I want to point out. We just saw the FBI director testify in front of Congress. Everything that he was accused of, he basically said that he either did not know about it or there was no wrongdoing. Well, now we have another example, and I hope they bring him back, because now we have another example of the FBI with wrongdoing, purposely targeting people. This goes beyond the Twitter files. Okay? This goes beyond that. This goes back to revolutionary leaders, people like MLK, people like Fred Hampton, people like Malcolm X. It's not just about what they did in reference to social media. It's about the fact that the FBI has been targeting people in real life, in person, in real time. These men went to jail. Now, I would question whether or not they could sue. I think they should be able to sue. They were set up. This is terrible. Like, absolutely terrible. Now, I'm glad that they are releasing 3 of them. I'm glad they're getting released. But the problem that we need to point out is that they should have never been arrested in the first place. This was a setup. And it makes you wonder, who else has the FBI done this to? Who else that we just don't know about? Let's continue.
The FBI is still doing and has been doing a lot of these unfair sting cases where they prey on mentally ill young men who really are not interested in terrorism.
We've reached out to the FBI and Department of Justice, but have not heard back. Ellison Barber, NBC News.
Okay. Now I want to go to this article here from Reuters as well, because they give a little bit more detail. So I want to bring this up as well. Judge orders 3 of the Newburgh 4 freed in New York synagogue, a bomb plot. So here we are again. 3 men convicted more than a decade ago of plotting to blow up the New York City synagogues, a Jewish community center, and shoot down military planes were ordered to be released from prison by a judge on Thursday who said they had been manipulated by the FBI. In a scathing opinion against the FBI, the presiding judge called the men hapless, petty criminals who were easily manipulated by the government in a sting operation. The men to be released are Antana Williams, David Williams, and Laguerre Payan, whom were 3 of what became known as the Newburgh 4. A 4th man, described as the ringleader by the government, James Cromedy, did not seek compensation release and is expected to serve until 2030. Lawyers for the men could not immediately be identified by Reuters to seek comment. U.S. District Judge Colleen McMahon wrote in a 28-page order filled Thursday that all 4 men were caught up in a scheme in 2009 to attack the synagogue's community center and launch Stinger missiles at military aircraft, driven by overzealous FBI agents and an unsavory confidential informant. A spokesperson for the FBI was not immediately available to comment to Reuters. Where is the FBI director now? He just testified in front of Congress. Where is he now? How I wish this information would have been released before he testified. They need to bring him back and ask him about this particular case. What else does he not know about? I don't know about that. I wasn't involved in that. We didn't do anything wrong. How many more of these situations are going to be exposed before the U.S. government actually calls the FBI out for what it is? It goes on to say the judge granted compassionate release to 3 men and reduced their sentence time to time served plus 90 days, citing concerns for the men's health and her own qualms about the original 25-year sentence she imposed on the men in 2011. Cromartie was described as the ringleader by prosecutors during the trial, but Judge McMahon wrote that Cromartie was a small-time grifter who was broke and unemployed when he was enlisted in the FBI-driven plot, who provided fake bombs to plant in exchange for $250,000 in the jihadist mission. Broke and unemployed. That's who they prey on. They don't prey on rich people. Rich people don't need $250,000. You know what that is to some people? That's a game changer for some people. You don't have a job or you lost your job and you're broke and someone offers you $250,000. Cromartie enlisted the other 3 men to serve as lookouts, the judge wrote. Nothing about the crimes was the defendant's own doing. The FBI invented the conspiracy, McMahon wrote. The 3 men are scheduled to be released in October. What do you do? Where do you go from here? You know, all these years, they've been sitting in jail. How do you get that life back? How do you undo the psychological and physical trauma that they endured when they were in prison? For what? I think they should sue. Not just for the time that was served, not just for what the FBI did to them, but also for therapy. I think that they should be able to have free therapy after this. Can you imagine? Bill says they almost certainly will have grounds to file a lawsuit. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. Is Congress going to call this out? Perry says a victory really 11 years too late. Really? Yes. I mean, these guys have been in prison almost over a decade. And then people wonder why we say, no, we don't trust the FBI. This is why. And they're not the only ones they've set up. They've set up other people. Like I said before, they set up people, they planted people to trick Fred Hampton. MLK, Malcolm X. I don't know if these men are going to be willing to talk or to explain their story once they're released. I don't know. But this is not a one-off. Not a one-off. Salmon says they've been doing this shit since forever. Exactly. And who calls them out? There's no accountability. No accountability. And I cannot believe, like, again, this was just announced the other day. And they just had the FBI director testify in front of the House Committee for the Federal Weaponization of Government. Terrible, terrible. That's a mess. That's an absolute mess. Thank you for the super chat, James. In the end, good will become evil and evil will become good. Once America destroyed the sanctity of marriage, God brought his judgment upon America. Little Horn. Truth is the only thing that hurts. Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Like when I tell people, this is what I'm trying to explain. This is not something that voting for Republican or Democrat is changing. They just do what they want. All of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, they do whatever they want. Tammy says, so it appears that the FBI have to manufacture terrorists in order to show that they're doing their job. That's what it appears to be. Boy, what a joke. What a joke. Let me check Rockfin really quick. Just want to make sure I'm checking that. But these are the kind of things that we got to pay attention to, because it's just, I know Due Dissidence is going to talk about this in more detail tonight. I don't have as much bandwidth to talk about it in detail as they will tonight, because I do have a hard stop at 7. But I do know that they plan to go into a little bit more detail. So don't miss them tonight, because when I tell you this is a doozy, it is a doozy. A hot mess, a hot mess. Thank you so much for the super chat, James. What's crazy is I trust the FBI more than I do science, yet I trust neither. That's interesting. I don't trust the FBI. I don't trust any of those government agencies. Thank you for the super chatted kids. Sabby, please consider Joe Biden's crime bill placed thousands of Black men and people of color in prison disproportionately. The FBI has done so since its inception. But these guys were set, like they were targeted. They really went after 4 poor Black men who they knew needed the money. What a mess. We're going to move on to our next story. And this is about Senate Democrats and Bernie Sanders, and Glenn Greenwald has some things to say. We've been pretty critical about the billions of dollars that the U.S. government has been sending to Ukraine. I think we've been very vocal about that, right? We have also discussed that the Pentagon has failed multiple audits. Apparently, they can't keep track of what they've spent their money on. Who would have thought? So, and now there was actually legislation that was presented to actually have some type of oversight over the Ukraine spending in reference to the defense budget. Part of that is due to the fact that the US government is not keeping track of this. Part of it's due to the fact that the Pentagon did not pass multiple audits. So to me, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, yes, let's put someone in charge of this to monitor these transactions. So this way, next time going forward, the Pentagon will not fail their audit. I don't think they should be sending billions over there in the first place. But that is actually the subject in the legislation at hand. And that was voted on. And you will not be surprised to hear that the majority of Senate Democrats voted against that. And that includes Mr. Bernie Sanders, boo. Let's get into it. Listen to this. Senate Democrats block oversight office to monitor U.S. aid for Ukraine. Let's get into this, and then we're going to show you Glenn Greenwald's response in reference to this situation, because I think more people need to call this out. And I hate to say it, but I told you so. So here we go. Senate Democrats banded together Wednesday night to oppose the creation of a new office to audit U.S. military assistance for Ukraine as part of a provision in the annual defense spending bill. 45 Democrats, including every member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, voted down an amendment to establish an office of the lead inspector general for Ukraine assistance as part of the fiscal 2024 National Defense Authorization Act. And here are the names. Senator Angus King, who's an independent from Maine, Senator Bernie Sanders, who's an independent from Vermont, and Senator Rand Paul, who's a Republican from Kentucky, also joined the Democrats in rejecting the new oversight office. Now, let's talk about something here for a second. Angus King, he's an independent, but he usually ends up voting along with Democrats, same as Bernie Sanders. Angus King doesn't claim to be progressive. Rand Paul, who's a Republican, does not claim to be progressive. But Bernie Sanders, of all people, does claim to be progressive, and he also claims to care so much about money and spending and where the money is going, right? Wasn't this a big part of Bernie's campaign? Wasn't this a big part of that? Where's the money going? Where's the money coming from? Right? You would think that Bernie Sanders would actually be in support of having some type of oversight of the money that's being spent in reference to Ukraine. He voted against it. Let's continue. The Democratic opposition, which included several senators in vulnerable seats, such as Jackie Rosen of Nevada, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Sherrod Brown of Ohio, and Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, kept the amendment from clearing the required 60-vote threshold to be part of the bill. So this is not even added to the bill now. Not even added to the bill. So you guys see the problem? A kid says Bernie Sanders is becoming the opposite of everything he claimed to support. Exactly. 100%. The Democratic opposition, if passed, it would have allotted $10 million from the NDAA's $886 billion budget toward the creation of a 30-person inspector general's office. Let's go on. There's Joe Manchin, of course. Senator Roger Wicker, who's a Republican from Mississippi, Senator Jim Risch, Republican from Idaho, drafted the provision. So the legislation was actually created by two Republican senators. I am dismayed that my Democrat colleagues withheld support for this reasonable, effective effort to conduct additional oversight of U.S. aid to Ukraine. Lawmakers are far better positioned to support Ukraine when taxpayers feel confident that their money is spent on a transparent and effective basis. I will continue promoting rigorous oversight of Ukrainian military aid as I also push the Biden administration to provide Ukraine the weapons it needs to win this war. So Wicker isn't even in opposition to funding Ukraine, sending them weapons, sending them more money. He's not in opposition to that. He's just in opposition to the Pentagon obviously failing these audits and for the U.S. government not to be able to account for what the money is being spent on. So he's just basically saying that someone needs to oversee the spending and the funds. Again, why would Bernie Sanders be against that? For the people who still say that Bernie is anti-war, miss me with all of that, by the way. Some people still say that. It was also co-sponsored by a broad coalition that included critics of defense aid for Ukraine, such as Senator Josh Hawley, who's a Republican from Missouri. I guess all of a sudden we have billions of dollars laying around that we can just give to Ukraine, Hawley said in March on Fox News. It's an affront to the American taxpayers, the American people, and it's got to stop. Now, it's just very interesting to me that the people who are complaining about the spending are not Democrats at all. And it's not all Republicans. There's some Republicans complaining about it, but for the most part, this is bipartisan. They just don't have money for us. It goes on to say that Senator John Kennedy, who's a Republican from Louisiana, Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah, also sponsored the provision to lend funding following Russia's unprovoked. You see how they worded this? You see how they worded this, guys? Following Russia's unprovoked invasion of the nation, February 24th, 2022. Haven't we already debunked this multiple times that you cannot, deny that Russia did invade, but at the same time, you cannot deny that Russia was invoked? Haven't we, they were provoked? Haven't we debunked this multiple times? Okay. But you see what they're all in on it. All media is in on it. Canada and Cinema wrote a USA Today op-ed in June defending U.S. assistance to Ukraine while still calling for an independent auditor to provide transparency to taxpayers about the funding. Now, why would they be doing this, right? Because probably their constituents are the ones complaining. This is usually how it goes, right? There's probably Cinema constituents and Kennedy constituents saying, wait a minute now. Where is all this money going? Is that my taxpayer money going over there? Ukraine is not without flaws. We've heard several unsettling reports of bad actors exploiting our generosity, the senators wrote. Some of our costly weapons have ended up in black markets, and corrupt officials have tried to line their own pockets. And I also want to add here, too, some of those weapons ended up in countries in Africa. You don't really hear them talking about that. Don't really hear them talking about that. Let's continue. President Volodymyr Zelensky is working to hold bad actors accountable. He has fired several top officials ensnared in a corruption scandal. We trust that our friends in Ukraine take corruption seriously. We must verify, too. Rather than a patchwork of watchdogs at the Pentagon, State Department, and the U.S. Agency for International Development, Kennedy and Sinema advocated for a single inspector general similar to the one appointed in 2008 to oversee Afghanistan spending. Now, this is important in reference to Bernie Sanders. Why? Because it appears Bernie Sanders had no problem with an inspector general overseeing the spending that was going to Afghanistan. So why is it that all of a sudden Bernie Sanders has a problem with the spending, with the overseeing of the spending in reference to Ukraine? We're going to go into that too. I'm going to show you receipts about that. Paul, in a separate amendment, had suggested that the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan reconstruction be given oversight of Ukraine instead. And let's continue. Under Wicker's amendment, President Biden would have been given authority to appoint the Inspector General for Ukraine assistance. On Tuesday, the president approved an additional $400 million in Ukraine aid. See, this is the kind of stuff that's just going right over people's eyes. This is going right over people's head. Like all this other stuff that's in the news that tends to take the spotlight. A lot of people talking about Twitter's no longer Twitter and it's now X. All of that type of news, which really isn't as important. And at the same time, these things are happening. More money just going out the door to Ukraine. The U.S. has spent as much as $113 billion on funding to the war-torn nation in 2022, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. $113 billion gone out the door. That money could have gone to us. That money could have gone to our infrastructure. And miss me with the infrastructure bill, because according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, that amount that they approve for our infrastructure, that's not even enough to maintain it, let alone improve it. We went through those numbers as well. That money could have gone to house people in this country. That money could have gone towards education. That money could have gone towards healthcare in this country. So this idea that we don't have the money, we've always had the money. They just don't want to give the money to us. Let's continue. It's nothing short of a slap in the face to every hardworking American citizen when career politicians like Sherrod Brown actively oppose transparency for how they're spending our money. It's not unreasonable to demand, let alone expect, our elected officials to treat our tax dollars with the respect it is due. We've spent over $100 billion in Ukraine, and it's outrageous that Sherrod Brown would oppose even a simple audit of how that money has to be spent. While everyday Americans are struggling with Biden's inflation, Democrats like Jackie Rosen vote to harass Americans with thousands of new IRS agents while sending billions in taxpayer dollars overseas and won't even support basic oversight. We need real accountability for every dollar spent in Ukraine. Now, that's a Republican politician complaining about that. Why would you vote against that? What are you trying to hide from the American people? Why don't you want us to see what that money was spent on? I think we need a spreadsheet. I think we need a spreadsheet to see what every single dollar went to over there. And if it's spent properly, the way that it was supposed to be spent, then they should have nothing to hide. Now, Glenn Greenwald definitely called out Bernie Sanders in reference to this. Some other people have on Twitter too. If you're not on Twitter, it's crazy right now. So Glenn Greenwald chimed in. Let me make this a little bit bigger because Glenn went all in. Bernie Sanders joined every Senate Democrat except two, Ossoff and Tester, in voting no on an amendment to appoint an inspector general to provide oversight and supervision on the billions of dollars the U.S. is sending to Ukraine, the most corrupt country in Europe. This measure failed by 51 to 48. Now, what is he referring to? So here are the results right here. We'll pull it up. Oh, actually, we'll go to Mike Tracy's thing because it shows it better when you see it this way. So Michael Tracy tweeted this. Here's the vote summary. 200 people voted. You need 3/5 for a majority. Obviously, it was rejected. We talked about that. Statement of purpose to establish the office of the lead inspector general for Ukraine assistance. 51 yay, 48 nay, and 1 not voting. If we scroll down, so you can see, here's the list. Name names. Go over here to S. Sanders, third column, nay. Bernie Sanders. When are people going to stop the hero worshiping of Bernie Sanders? When? When is Democratic Socialists of America going to call out people like Bernie Sanders for legislation? When? When are people going to call this out? This is the same person when they ran for office. We have to pay attention to the money. We got to get the money out. Money equals corruption. That's why I'm running a grassroots campaign. Where's all this money going? The guy who always spoke about the money, all of a sudden doesn't want oversight of the money. Make it make sense. There's so much hero worshiping when it comes to Bernie Sanders. You can see the list of names here alphabetically. So again, you can see most of them voted nay. Most of the Democrats voted nay. And someone was asking about, see, here's Elizabeth Warren also, by the way, said no. Warnock, no. It's just, They're all in on it. Let's see what Fetterman, look, John Fetterman, nay. So you see what I'm saying? These so-called progressives, they're not making a difference. They're going along with Democratic Party leadership. That's right, JB. Dick Durbin didn't vote. These people don't make a difference. The veil is coming off, SDRC. Yes, yes, piece by piece. Bernie Sanders, Mr. Follow the Money, apparently doesn't want you to follow the money anymore. Now let's go on because Glenn had more to say. Glenn had more to say. For those asking about why Rand Paul was the only Republican to vote no on this Ukraine oversight bill, we asked his office. We're covering this tonight on System Update, but it seems clear it's because he wants the existing IG to do this, not create a new agency for it. And let me go back 1 second because I want to make sure I got all of that. Here's Aaron Monte said, our revolution against minimal proxy war oversight. Glenn says he really just keeps sticking it to the establishment. I believe I chimed in here somewhere. I hope people will finally see the truth about Bernie Sanders now. Yeah, when are people going to finally sit down and throw their hands up in the air and admit that Bernie Sanders is a part of the establishment? That Bernie Sanders' whole game, boo, was to basically stir up enough energy across this country with young people and keep you in the Democratic Party. Ain't no way. Let's think about this. Let's put some logic here. He runs for office in 2016. The DNC cheats him. He goes around this country still trying to help Hillary Clinton win after they cheated him, and he wants to be hush about it. Then he decides to run again. The next presidential election, take more money from working class and poor people across this country, build an even bigger movement, and then once again tell you, go vote for Joe Biden. Go vote for the corporate Democrat. After he told you all those months to fight against those types of people, to fight against the money, to fight against the corporate greed and the corporate interest. He is just a part of the establishment. All he did was basically take the problems and concerns of working class people, put it on a national stage, energize the young people, particularly the college kids, to get the word out and spread it across social media, to get you all riled up and energetic, just to funnel you right back into the same corporate corrupt party that's been screwing you over for decades. That's all he did. Now, Glenn is right. He's not the only one. If you look on Twitter now, a lot of people are calling this out. I hope this is the year that people realize that these people are just frauds. I hope this is really the year. And not just Bernie. DSA, the squad, all of that. All of it. Because I got a story about DSA that I just saw recently. How they're actually trying to prevent any type of third-party movement or any type of socialist rhetoric. Any type of anti-war message. I told you they were frauds. This has all just been a game. Now, Lee Fang had some things to say about Bernie Sanders too with this vote. What's incredible here is that Bernie Sanders once championed the exact same style audit of the Afghan war money as an example of what to do for all of the DOD. Elizabeth Warren championed the same style IG for bank bailouts. Now both oppose a special audit of Ukraine money. Lee's calling it out. I told you when it came to the same issue with the money that was being spent in reference to Afghanistan, Bernie Sanders was not opposed to this. In fact, according to Lee Fang, they were championing. He was an advocate for it. But when it comes to Ukraine, all of a sudden, no, I'm against that. No, we don't need to. We don't need to show the American people where the money's going. After you spend 2 election cycles in a row showing people where the money's going, make it make sense, people. Who's Bernie Sanders really out here fighting for? Now, Lee goes on to pull up receipts. Let's scroll down. The Saiger audit found billions of Afghan reconstruction money wasted on unused gas stations, unattended schools, phony social programs. The Saiger was created by Dems in 2007. Now, the GOP proposes a virtually identical audit of Ukraine contractors, and there's only 2 Democrats in favor. Does this not sound strange to you guys? This is suspect. Lee goes on to say, let me make this larger. I wrote about the ongoing efforts to establish SAIGA to oversee the 117 billion plus allocated to the Ukraine war and reconstruction, contractors and weapons. Another common sense that is warped by partisan polarization. So let's look at this. So he says here, actually, it might be easier if I just, no, I do need to click on it. The push for a special inspector general for Ukraine assistance has unfortunately become a partisan issue. Another casualty of the negative polarization cycle in Washington, D.C. Last March, Senator Josh Hawley attempted to establish the audit office as an amendment. The bill splintered the Republican caucus in half, while every Democratic senator, except for Senator John Tester, Democrat from Montana, and John Ossoff, Democrat from Georgia, voted against it. Surprisingly, notable opposition to establishing the office came from Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Warren, before her rise to the Senate, became a national figure as an oversight official working alongside SIGTARP, the auditor that oversaw the 2008 bank bailout funds. As Warren has touted in the past, SIGTARP, with relatively limited investigative resources, brought criminal charges against 144 individuals, obtained criminal convictions of 107 defendants, and obtained civil judgments for restitution totaling $4.3 billion. So why would Elizabeth Warren be opposed to exposing something like that now? Is it because we are not supposed to expose funding when it comes to Ukraine? Because that would destroy the narrative that's been told to the American people? Because then the American people would be pretty lit. The American people would be pretty lit to find out maybe some of that money didn't go to the places that they said it was going to. Is that what this is about? Let's go on. The Afghanistan auditor, known as Saiger, discovered even more breathtaking fraud and contractor abuse. The auditor found that the U.S. Agency for International Development wasted $335 million on a diesel power plant in the country that was over budget and barely used. Over $90 million on a program to place only 55 Afghan women in government jobs, and over $1 billion on ghost schools to build classrooms that were never utilized and left empty and dilapidated. The Pentagon reportedly spent $6 million on a project that imported 9 Italian goats to boost Afghanistan's Kashmir market and $43 million on a single gas station. The Afghanistan Audit Office was established by congressional Democrats after 2006 midterm elections, during which the party gained power. Press releases from that era showcase the Democratic Party's celebration of its efforts to create Saiger. Progressive lawmakers like Sanders once championed Siger as a model for better oversight of the Defense Department. Now, as President Joe Biden leads U.S. efforts to support Ukraine in its war and recovery against Russia, the tables have turned. Democrats have so far refused to co-sponsor or propose a single bill in Congress to establish a similar SIGA office to oversee Ukraine war money. And that is because the president that is sitting in the White House right now is a Democrat. They already got their marching orders. These people there don't help you. They already told, don't you vote in favor of that. That'll make Joe Biden look bad. If people find out that some of that money didn't go to the places that we said it went to, that'll make the Biden administration look really bad, and that'll hurt his chances for 2024. This is all about optics. Lee goes on to say, the bills now before lawmakers include proposals from Representative Whitman, Chip Roy, John Kennedy, and Josh Hawley. On Monday, the Biden administration directed lawmakers to vote against the creation of SAGA to oversee Ukraine money. The administration claims that new audit efforts are unnecessary, given that the government already has internal offices devoted to finding waste. John Sopko, appointed by President Obama to head the SIGER office for Afghanistan, has criticized the current administration's position, noting that such high levels of spending in Ukraine, a whole of a government special audit office is vital. He also lashed out at officials who argued that new oversight might impede the flow of needing military or recovery assistance. So why are they opposed to all of this now? I sincerely hope come 2024 that people bring this up, that people pay close attention to this. Lee said Rand Paul has even said he's okay with President Obama's special inspector general for Afghanistan running the proposed special inspector general for Ukraine. Yet this becomes a blue-red team thing. I sincerely hope I am not high, citrus. I don't smoke. But I have had a little bit too much caffeine. Sorry. But no, I don't smoke. But all I can say is I just wish people can stop defending Bernie Sanders now. And that's my take on that. Thank you for the super chat, Landrew. Thank you, Sabby, for being a kind, loving, and caring educator of us all. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat, James. Sebastiano, true science is empirical. It is a method. If one does not adhere to the method, it is pseudoscience. Thank you for that. Thank you, Owie. That's an interesting name. Aid to Ukraine is really just money laundering. They donate, aka send junk to Ukraine, and then these politicians and their friends pocket the money. Is that why they don't want you to see where this money is going? Every American should demand a spreadsheet. Like, seriously, we all have that right to see and to know what that money's being spent on. Thank you, Steve. Sabby, did you watch the congressional hearing on UFOs? What did you think? I have not seen that yet. Thank you, Natalie. I'd like some representation for our taxation, wouldn't you? Thank you for the super chat, Colin. Gray Zone did an indie audit on Ukraine funding. I will DM you the article. Okay, cool. Let me see if I can check that now. So Gray Zone will probably talk about this if they haven't yet. I mean, I just saw this story yesterday. Oh, I see it. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Colin. Let's see if they did a chart. That'll be cool. They did a chart. I don't know if they did for sure, but we'll see. So here's the article that Colin was referring to. So Grayson said, all aboard the gravy train, an independent audit of U.S. funding for Ukraine. Okay. So let's see. I sincerely hope they have like a chart or a graph because I don't have. Let me just check for a chart or graph first. Ooh. Beneficiaries of U.S. AIDS, Ukraine aid, Polish NATO lobbyists, a private equity firm, rural Kenyans, a TV station in Toronto. It says U.S. aid awarded $21.8 billion to Ukraine throughout fiscal years of 2022, 2023. Roughly 41% of that $53.4 billion it spent during that period. Mysteriously, a portion of U.S. aid funding earmarked for Kyiv was sent to Kenya and Ethiopia via other agencies, with the award description stating projects in Africa were partially funded with response funds and Ukraine supplemental funds. Jesus Christ. See, this is what they don't want you to see. This is why they said no, vote no. Don't let the American people see this. U.S. aid sent $4.5 billion to Ukraine via the World Bank to pay off Kyiv's debt and fund various social programs, including government pensions. U.S. aid made a total of $21 billion worth of direct payments to World Bank in fiscal years 2022 and 2023. More money than all of the funding Washington sent to the bank between fiscal years of 08 and 21 combined. The $4.5 billion allocated for Ukraine funded programs directed by the bank's International Development Association and International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Jesus, here we go. Transactions over time. This graph shows trends over time for all transactions to this recipient. Hover over the bars for more detailed information. I'm hovering. Oh, this might be a picture. Yeah, this is an image. But look at this, guys. Look at how much money, 2022, 2023, boom. U.S. aid supplied $1 billion grant to the World Bank's International Bank for Reconstruction and Development to subsidize projects Ukraine cannot fund at this time. You see this, guys? This is where the money's going. U.S. aid has supplied $20 million to miscellaneous foreign awardees since February 2020. Recipients include a Polish think tank called the Casimir Pulaski Foundation, a Toronto-based Ukrainian TV channel, a collection of Ukrainian anti-corruption organizations, and other groups listed in the screenshot below. These awards were issued on top of $26 million worth of funds U.S. aid sent these groups between 2016 and February 2022. More escalation. Unfortunately, this is blurry. At least it is on my end. But that's just to give you guys an idea. It goes on and on. I'll actually put this article in the chat. Let me see. So you guys can read this on your own, actually. There we go. So you can read more of this. It's a long article. It goes on to say $500,000 for the Casimir Pulaski Foundation in 2023 to fund a program dedicated to advancing U.S. foreign policy objectives by supporting economic growth, agriculture and trade, global health. They don't even support our health and democracy, conflict prevention and humanitarian assistance in Ukraine. The funds were earmarked to strengthen the International Center for Ukrainian Victory Initiative. You guys will have to read that full article on your own. I don't have time to read the whole thing, but this is crazy. This is see where all the money's going? You see how the money's just going to, this is why they don't want to do an audit, or they don't want someone to oversee the funds. That's why. But shout out to the Gray Zone for covering that. That's why I said read that whole article when you get a chance to do so. All right, guys, I'm by myself today. I'm without Eric, so give me a little bit of slack. I'm a little bit slower when I don't have a producer, so just keep that in mind. But But yeah, this is freaking crazy. That's crazy. If you have not had a chance to do so, please go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. That helps me with the algo. Okay, I'll come to Rockfin at the end. We're going to go on to this next story here. We're going to talk about more scams. There's an organization that's getting a lot of buzz. It's called Generation Z for Change. Now, when you hear about this group, it sounds like they're doing really progressive things, right? They talk a lot about the need to fight back against climate change. They talk about that. They talk about what's going to be left for their generation. And the name of the group is Generation Z for Change. And change sounds like a positive thing, right? Well, I had some things to say about this organization after there was a video of one of the members of the organization, Elise Jossie, that went viral on Twitter of her interrupting press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, about how important the climate is to her generation. And there was something very off to me about this interruption. Having seen multiple people do these types of, interruptions and pushing back against politicians, whether it's been Jose, whether it's been Lucy from Indie News Network, whether it's been other activists that I've run into here pushing back against the politicians in reference to legislation and issues that matter to a lot of us. There was something off about this one. And I think you're going to see it too. Because the number of times where we've seen Jose confront these politicians and Lucy confront these politicians, one thing that seems to remain the same is that they are removed from these events. But you'll notice in this particular clip, not only is Elise not removed, she's allowed to continue saying everything she needs to say, and she's not interrupted by the press secretary. Now, Jose has not confronted the press secretary. Lucy has not confronted the press secretary. They have confronted congressmen and women, senators, journalists. So you tell me how this young woman here is able to finish everything that she needs to say and not be interrupted once and not removed. Let's go ahead and get into the video clip here, because people were pretty mad at me for this, for calling this out, but I had receipts. Let's get into that interruption.
Excuse me for interrupting, but asking nicely hasn't worked out. 1 million young people wrote to the administration pleading not to approve a disastrous oil drilling project in Alaska, and we were ignored. So I'm here channeling the strength of my ancestors and generation. Will the administration...
Let's go back. Look at the way when she stands up. This is why I said this was staged. Like, you can't tell me. Watch this. Now she's acting like she's very afraid, right? She's taking that deep breath that's rehearsed. Let's go on.
Excuse me for interrupting, but asking nicely hasn't worked out. 1 million young people wrote to the administration pleading not to approve a disastrous oil drilling project in Alaska, and we were ignored. So I'm here channeling the strength of my ancestors.
Watch this now, okay? Now, here he comes up to basically do what would have been done to Jose or Lucy. They would be told to be quiet, sit down, leave. But watch this, watch.
And generation, will the administration stop approving new oil?
That was the press secretary saying, let her talk, let her talk. The same press secretary that won't let Simon Batia, who is a White House journalist. This is the guy you see a lot of times, like she would never call on him. So eventually he got to the point where he would be like, hey, you need to call on me. You won't answer any of my questions. That guy, he's on Twitter too. But think about this now. She's just going to let just a random activist not only stand up and say what they want to say, but she's going to let them continue to talk. She's going to say, let her talk, but she won't let journalists talk. Journalists who are supposed to be there when their job to cover the White House events. She won't let some of them talk, but she's going to let her talk. Why would she let her talk unless she knew who she was? And we're going to get into that. Watch this.
Will the administration stop approving new oil and gas projects and align with youth, science, and frontline communities from the North Slope of Alaska to Louisiana?
First of all, I appreciate your...
Notice no one boos. How many times have we seen these events where no one boos? Okay, let's continue.
Courage.
She said, I appreciate your courage, and everyone claps. When does this happen, people? When does this happen? She interrupted her. She wasn't called on to speak. She interrupted her just like Jose has interrupted politicians, just like Lucy has interrupted people, and they're thrown out. But she's told, let her speak. I appreciate your courage. Let's continue.
All you have to do, and I know you're speaking about a particular project, and I get that. I understand that.
You have approved multiple projects since then, and more at a faster rate than the Trump administration. We need you to act on your campaign promises.
Declare a climate emergency.
No one cuts her off, which, by the way, she's correct. They're not acting on their campaign promises. That's 100% true. But that doesn't mean that she's not in on it. I'm going to explain to you what this group is and who she really is, and then you'll understand.
Which side are you on now?
Please respond. Please respond.
I was trying to.
Then she tells the press secretary, please respond. Really, guys? You think they would allow this to happen from any random Joe Schmo?
And I'm happy to respond. So look, this is an administration, and if you look at this president, you look at the action that he's taken, he has taken more action on climate change than any other president. He has an ambitious policy. He has. And I don't think you can deny that. I think you can.
Yeah, look, she's paid to do this job. She's lying. And the thing is this in reference to the climate issue, Joe Biden is doing more drilling, which he said would not happen. And it's not just the Willow Project. See, that's the obvious one. They're not also telling you about the drilling off the coast of Texas, which I told you guys about a couple of months ago, that Biden also approved that as well. It's not just the Willow Project. So again, Corinne is doing her job that she's paid to do as press secretary, which is to protect the president at all costs, even when the president is wrong. But again, like I said, had it been anyone else in that spot who Corinne didn't already know, they would have never been allowed to finish their statement in the first damn place. And the guy who came over to speak to her would have removed her from that room. Let me let them finish and I'll show you some receipts.
I agree with everything that he's put forward and he has done. And there's always more work to be done. He's going to continue to be ambitious. He's going to continue to take action. And that is something that he has promised during his campaign and will continue to do so. I'm happy to have this conversation with you outside of this speaking event at this time. But we can talk through all that he has done and all he wants to continue to do. And we can also listen to you. And listen to what you have brought forth right now. But it's okay, guys. I want her to,
It's okay, guys. Don't remove her. She's allowed to stay. She has a right to say what she wants to say. Now, I want to show you Elise's response after she did that confrontation there. This is all staged too. Listen to this. She said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Listen to this.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind words. I just wanted to reiterate the words of AOC and say that buildings like this, they belong to us. People who work in there.
Problem number one, who did she say that she wanted to reiterate? I wanted to reiterate the words of AOC.
Supposed to represent us. I was deciding whether I was going to stand up or not moments before, and I just realized that the only reason I wasn't going to was out of fear. My fear from what's currently happening, whether that's extreme wildfires or workers dying from extreme heat, was far greater than my fear for standing up. I'm just going to echo the words of Justin Jones after I spoke yesterday. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. We have to stop approving new coal, oil, and gas projects and set a managed decline of current oil and gas production. But more than that, we need to build a just transition for oil and gas workers, build community through walkable cities with bike lanes, buses, and trains, conserve our beautiful forests and reconnect with nature, and oh so much more. Thank you all, and I can't wait to share more solutions and actions you can take soon. Bye.
Okay. So, people were kind of mad at me because I tried to tell people that this was all staged. I tried to tell people that this was all a part of the game. Now, people came after me on Twitter. I had a tweet. I have to find it. I don't have it up there. But I had a tweet that said, this is staged. It got over 3,000 likes, I think. And some people were really mad. As if I wouldn't have done research first and checked and had receipts. Now I want to show you what Nuance Bro said, and then I'm going to show you receipts to back up what he's saying. Even Marianne Williamson fell for that. So many people fell for this. Look, Marianne retweeted saying what needs to be said. As if this is just some random person who attended this event and just was really brave and decided to stand up. No, she's one of them. Let me show you how. So I said she's an op. She is controlled opposition. Listen to what I retweeted Nuance Bro, right? So look at what he says. She is the executive director of Gen Z for Change, which used to be called TikTok for Biden. And they have been to the White House multiple times to meet with Biden and even Barack Obama. KJP, which is Corinne Jean-Pierre, knows exactly who she is and of course allowed her to speak. But people were mad at me. And I was like, look, we can do a little bit of digging. We can do a little bit of digging. I can go back and I can show you guys my tweet because people were pissed. And like, I'm like, seriously, guys, you guys didn't look at this. You don't think this is odd? Nothing about this video is weird to you. Even some of the people who've seen like Jose Vega's, confrontations over and over and over again, even some of those people fell for it. And I was just really like, guys, don't you think it's strange? Nobody kicked her out. There were no boos. Do a little bit of digging and you'll see. So let me go ahead and pull up. I think I have it here. I'm going to pull up the tweet that made a lot of people mad. And people came for me. But by the way, I did look. I did look first. Okay, here we go. Let me go ahead and pull up at it here. So I want to show you. I didn't put this here first. I should have, but I didn't. Where'd it go? There's me again. She's an op. This one. This is the one that made everyone mad. I said this is staged. Notice how she's not physically removed from the event. Real activists that interrupt are removed. Look at Gen Z for Change website and you'll see this is just another organization to keep you in the two-party system. This is not like some radical, brave, extreme activist organization. They are actually in bed with the Democratic Party. Wake up, people. People thought this same thing about Sunrise Movement. I don't know why people keep falling for this shit. I really don't. So people were mad. And like that tweet got what, over 3,900 likes? So let me show you a little something. Gen Z for Change, formerly called TikTok for Biden, is an American nonprofit advocacy organization founded in 2020 that uses social media to promote civil discourse and political action among members of the Gen Z. It consists of core team of 15 to 20 people and a coalition of over 500 content creators, which Elise is, by the way. She was a TikToker. And activists and partners with influencers, activists, and celebrities to produce multimedia content. I mean, it's just, I don't know what else to say to people. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. But having seen these things multiple times and been a part of people who have confronted people, been a part of those things, it was very obvious. Now, she's in a room with Barack Obama. Some of you may not have saw this. This was 1 year ago. By the way, it's on the fucking channel. Gen Z for Change. Gen Z for Change. They have a YouTube channel. You can find her on there too, okay? Discussing digital organizing with President Obama. I don't have to play the whole thing. Just look, watch this. Watch this.
How are you? So nice to see you, Elise. You want to start?
Yeah.
Come on.
What you were saying in the beginning really.
Who's that? Who's the girl right here sitting at the damn table with the t-shirt on that says Gen Z for Change? Notice what he said right at the beginning. Pay attention. Make sure the captions are on. Listen to what he says right at the beginning.
How are you? So nice to see you, Elise.
How are you? It's so nice to see you, Elise. Because he knows her name. Remember when we told you a while back, we told you that the Biden administration, they had actually had a team of TikTokers, Gen Z young TikTokers that were out there promoting Biden for their generation to try to get them excited about voting for Joe Biden. This was Biden for TikTok. They changed the name Gen Z for Change to do something similar to what a name like the Sunrise Movement would do, right? Gen Z for Change sounds positive. Sunrise Movement sounds positive until you see where their money came from. And we went into that. We went into how Sunrise Movement was taking money from George Soros. All these people were in bed with the Democratic Party. That's it. Look at this. Now she just chilling in the room with Barack Obama.
You want to start?
Yeah.
Come on.
What you were saying in the beginning really resonated with me, which is people are turning away from, mainstream news when it comes to like what they're going to pay attention to, which is really interesting. And I mean, whether we like that or not, it is the reality. It's more than just science, but it's about people. And the truth telling comes from what people are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And while we may lack mainstream media now, what we have now is what mainstream media won't talk about. And even though we don't have, journalists on TikTok, what we have is teachers talking about how they don't have funding for their classrooms right now. We have indigenous creators on the ground trying to, like their water protectors, trying to stop pipelines from being built. And I think that there's an immense opportunity as there is challenges with the polarization that's going on right now, because we're creating this whole new world where now we can prioritize maybe people, and maybe that is the truth telling that actually exists. Like creating movements actually dispels disinformation.
How are you?
So let me tell you what's happening here, people. Okay. See, I was not born yesterday. All right. This is just another organization pretending to be progressive, pretending to be, we're a little bit radical. We're on the outskirts. We're trying to fight back against the man and the power and the people. But they in bed with the people. They in bed with the damn party. You don't get to listen. Let me make something clear here. This was last year. This was 1 year ago. She had already met with Barack Obama. Now you sit back there and you tell me that Corinne Jean-Pierre doesn't know who she was. She knew exactly who she was, and that's exactly why she let her stand up and speak, and she did not interrupt her, and she wasn't removed. You have to be very careful with these organizations that have a progressive name without looking into the details of that organization. If they were TikTok for Biden, they still TikToking for Biden, okay? They just under a different name, boo. By the way, for all the people who told me that I was wrong, I accept apologies via DM or email. Okay? I don't usually brag about that. But the number of people who came after me, you're just being mean. You don't know what you're talking about. No, y'all motherfuckers didn't know what y'all was talking about. And shout out to BSKY. Thank you, BSKY. BSKY said, I think everybody owes Sabby Sabs an apology. Don't be too quick to get excited about something to the point where you're willing to shut down anyone who may show you a little bit of truth about something you're excited about, but you don't want to hear it. So that's that. Oh my God, that is that. And to show you an example, we don't forget about you, Jose. We didn't forget. Jose he responded to that. He responded to this. And Jose said, I'm Gen Z too, who cares also about our environment. Could you share my action in asking people in authority about why the U.S. is committing an environmental disaster? Just as a reminder, here's Jose. Watch how he's treated. We'll speed it up a little bit.
Oh, is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh? I'm looking for the one with Seymour Hersh because it's a policy and press hall event. So shouldn't we be talking about the Nord Stream since that's the biggest story of the century? And you guys, I'm sorry. I mean, you have the executive editor of the New York Times there who came out with a phony story to try and block Seymour Hersh. It's just kind of funny how that happened, I mean, did you even acknowledge Seymour Hersh? All of you are executive editors of papers that broke Pentagon, My Lai, Watergate. Is this the same papers or not? I mean, is there anything you've gotten right in the last 20 years, or am I mistaken about that? I mean, it's just kind of funny because Iraq, wrong. Syria, wrong. Russiagate, really wrong. Okay, I mean, the list goes on and on. So the last thing you could do to try and actually fix your reputation is acknowledge that through leaks, we had to find out that Zelensky was going to bomb Moscow on the anniversary. I mean, if you're so impartial, shouldn't you at least say, right, that Zelensky was going to bring us on the verge of World War III? That seems pretty fair. While Julian Assange rots in prison, all of you've got, fat checks because he's in jail for doing your job. And you know what? Tucker Carlson ain't no Seymour Hersh, but he did something you guys are scared to do. Speak the truth and actually be critical of the war, which is why he was actually fired from Fox, because you are all cowards. Every single one of you. None of you have actually had any relevancy. And you know what? The mainstream press is now dying. Nobody's ever going to listen to you again. You have no credibility with the public. The only people who care about what you have to say are elite assholes who have nothing productive to say anymore.
Notice you don't see people applauding in unison like you did in the Gen Z for change confrontation, right? Because typically that's not what happens.
And it's dying off. So will you at least say something, either about Nord Stream or Ukraine or the fact that Zelensky brought us to the verge of World War III, and the only reason we knew about that was through leaks? Go ahead. It's a free speech event, right? You guys are the press. Let's say something here. Mr. Khan, come on. You know, you're the executive editor of the New York Times, you know? I'm just trying to get into some good trouble here, man. Woo. Listen, Karen, get out of my face for a second. I got to talk to these gentlemen. Okay. Well, I just want to hear what they have to say. Go ahead. I'm done.
Wait your turn.
You're not going to tell them to you. Come.
So here's a security officer. I don't know who this guy is, but you see how they already bringing people in to come. This is what usually would happen.
You could project if we can't.
I would just say I think it's important to hear everybody's point of view.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right.
I do think that we need to give our moderator a chance to ask other questions.
We're on the verge of World War III.
Some of the people in the audience also do so. Thank you. Really, thank you.
Say something about this bombing. We blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Listen, don't stand there while there are people rotting in prison. Nobody said anything about Uhuru, right? The socialists who are in jail for being critical of this war. God damn it.
You see, that's typically how they handle you. That's also how they handle people like Medea Benjamin. I've seen her dragged out, handcuffed. And I'm supposed to believe that this woman from Gen Z for Change just allowed to stand up so freely and just say what she needed to say and not be interrupted and not be booed and not be dragged off. Get out of here. Get out of here. And Medea Benjamin has been very nice in her confrontation sometimes. And I've seen her drag this woman off. I'm going to go to some of the comments and we'll go to our next story. Thank you, Lorez says fake. Dems using her to be the next AOC. Just watch. Bingo. In short, what they're doing, they're using people like her to basically take young people, give them some type of hope. And she may have this hope herself. Give them some type of hope. Shovel them right back into the Democratic Party and make them believe that there are actually going to be some changes in some of the things that they're fighting for. When in reality, they have no idea how these parties really work monetarily. They have no idea the amount of money that flows between the corporations and the military industrial complex. They have no idea to realize that these people don't have any intention on doing what needs to be done to protect your future, boo. Thank you, Diego. I'm a staff reporter from NBC and you're on point. Hi, Diego. What's up, buds, not bombs? Got him. Yo, the number of people that came for me, man, I was like, y'all ain't do no research yet. Thank you, Frank. Run Sabby her apologies, y'all. I accept apologies via DM or email. All right. Next story. Max Blumenthal has been pretty vocally recently. He's always kind of vocal, but in reference to RFK Jr.'s position on Israel and Palestine, he's been very vocal about this, mainly via Twitter. He's talked about this before on Rising as well, and mainly because RFK Jr., for whatever reason, has not chosen to sit down and have this discussion with Max, which I think is a mistake. I think he should have that discussion with him. So Max took to Twitter. Now, this is in reference to this event that RFK Jr. Was at with Rabbi Shmuley in New York City. There were two attendees that went to that event. They came on last week to talk about their experience. And one of them actually posed a question to RFK Jr. about the Palestinian journalist who was a U.S. citizen that was murdered. But Max Blumenthal also had some things to say about this event, and I want to go ahead and get started with that. So he retweeted this clip, and I'll show you the clip in just a second. Watch RFK Jr. demolish his credibility as a peace candidate in 4.5 minutes. So I'm going to go to the clip, and then we're going to come back to what Max said. Oh, and by the way, for the people who will tell me he never said he was a peace candidate, that's actually a lie. In fact, Misty quote tweeted that, screenshot that. I can show you that too if you need it. He actually did say that. Let's go on.
We're going to let him speak. Whether I don't agree with Bobby on the vaccines, I'm quintuple vaxxed. I don't agree with Bobby on Ukraine. I am. And by the way, if I pop off in the middle of the speech, then you guys will know I shouldn't have had them. And if I make it to the end, who knows? But we don't have to agree because that's the whole point.
Israel, as you know, is the only place in the Mideast where there's freedom of expression for all citizens. It's the only place where women have rights. As you know, this week, people in Iran are being jailed. Women are being jailed for wearing habibs or not wearing habibs. It's the only place where gays have rights. There was 2 weeks ago a gay pride parade in Israel with 150,000 people in both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. At the same time, the government of Iran is hanging gays from cherry pickers and castrating them. The conduct of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, when they go into Palestinian territories is beyond anything in the world. Colonel Camp, one of the leading military historians and tacticians around the world, said, last week, 2 weeks ago, when Israel went to Jenin, Jenin is a bomb factory. Most nations, Russia, when it was dealing with issues like Jenin and Chechnya, simply bombed the neighborhood because you have a neighborhood where virtually 100% of the people who live there are supporting terrorism, where the terrorists are hiding behind civilians, and where everybody is involved in bomb making. And those bombs are destined to kill civilians, to be strapped on men, women, and children, and kill civilians in Israel. Most nations, and we've done this ourselves, and clearly Russia was doing it in Chechnya. Chechnya would go in there and bomb that neighborhood. What the Israeli IDF does is they send people to do retail combat, door to door, putting IDF soldiers at risk in order to avoid civilian casualties, collateral casualties. In the recent Jenin attack, there was 12 terrorists who were killed, all of them involved in bomb making, all of them involved in planning attacks on Jewish civilians, and not a single innocent person, child or civilian. Israel is unique in the Mideast for saying we're only going to attack military targets. And they're very...
Hold on to that piece right there. Only attack military targets. Hold on to that piece.
Very, very disciplined about doing so. Palestine, the Palestinian Authority, in contrast, follows a long tradition of deliberately targeting civilians. So anybody, and not only that, but they have a pay-to-slay policy. That is the official policy of the Palestinian Authority. If you kill a Jew, not a member of the IDF, if you kill any Jew, you are going to get awarded with pay for life. And if you go to jail or you're killed, your family will get payments for life.
Who is giving him this information? You see, this is why I think he won't talk to people like, this is why I think he will not talk to people like Max.
And the official policy of Hamas is the genocide of all the Jews. So they consider, and this, by the way, in 1948, when Israel was attacked at its birth. The plans were captured of Syria and Egypt and the other nations, and their plan was complete extermination of the Jews. They took the side of Hitler during World War II. They lost the war. And the practice and the policy of all those nations is to kill individual civilians, whereas Israel does the opposite. It only attacks military targets.
Okay, hold on to that piece that he said there, that they only attack military targets. And, you know, people like Max who have been there, someone mentioned Kim Iverson. Kim Iverson also, if I remember correctly, also reported from the Gaza Strip at one point in time. Max has been there. There's a bunch of independent journalists that have been there, and they've seen the conflict in person and reported about it. So Max had some things to say. He said a campaign that began as a defiant broadside against the war state and censorship industrial complex has suddenly pivoted to a bellicose exercise in pandering to rich Lukidniks who seek war with Iran, the permanent violent war housing of Palestinians, and the criminalization of activism that challenges Israeli apartheid. RFK Jr.'s host, Shmuley, a professional race hustler and alleged financial fraudster who owes the existence of his one-man political operation to the fortune of Sheldon Adelson, the late ultra-Zionist oligarch who called for dropping a nuclear weapon on Iran. If RFK was not handed a massive wad of Benjamins to suck up to Shmuley, he was embarrassing himself for free because he was clearly out of his depth. During a rambling, militaristic diatribe, he referred to hijabs as habibs. Someone mentioned this I saw someone say this in the chat. I just couldn't grab it in time. Pronounce Chechnya as though he hadn't heard of the place until 20 minutes before the event, and offered a history of Israel's creation so cartoonishly propagandic, it made Alan Dershowitz look like Elon Pop. RFK Jr. took it upon himself, or was taken on, to defend the Israeli army's brigade-sized invasion of Jenin, during which it bombed buildings with fighter jets and ran bulldozers through the middle of a refugee camp. He referred to the entire city as a bomb factory, justifying the invasion because, in his words, virtually 100% of the people there are supporting terrorism. According to RFK, everybody in Jenin is involved in bomb making. There are no civilians there at all. Therefore, all are legitimate targets. He did not seem to know that the Palestinian campaign of suicide bombing ended well over 15 years ago, or that the Palestinian Authority is legally forbidden from defending Palestinians from Israeli violence. Its primary function is to act as an occupation subcontractor. According to RFK Jr., the PA has an official pay to slay policy in which if you kill any Jew, you are going to get awarded with pay for life. Even professional AIPAC lobbyists shy away from this kind of baseless invective. The half-baked Hasbara escalated from there as RFK Jr. cited Richard Kemp, a former British Army officer who subsists on Israel lobby speaking fees, to claim the conduct of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, when they go into Palestinian territories is beyond anything in the world. While Israeli army commanders openly adhere to the Daya doctrine, named for the
We're going to let him speak.
Whoops. Oh, sorry, that started again. Named for the Beirut neighborhood Israel levied in 2006, and which calls for targeting Arab civilians in order to turn them against their leadership. RFK Jr. insisted that Israel's policy is to avoid civilian casualties. It exclusively attacks military targets. Sorry, I had to stop that video. It is hard to believe RFK Jr.'s ahistorical, belligerent line on Israel-Palestine was not bought and paid for by some pro-Israel billionaire. which means he's just as corruptible as any Democrat or GOP hack. But if he actually believes what he's saying, he's also at least as pro-war as they are. And this is a great point to mention. I really think it was a mistake, a huge mistake for him, number one, to say he's a peace candidate. And by the way, he did. We're going to go ahead and debunk that now. Because Stuck in the Mid said RFK Jr. never ran as a peace candidate. Whoever told you that lied to you. And so here's Misty with the receipts. I told you people always screenshot shit. Misty said, yes, he did. And here it is. I'll be speaking in NYC Tuesday at World Values Network, open to the public. Come watch me and Rabbi Shmuley dismantle establishment's craven attempt to use spurious anti-Semitism charges to derail the strongest peace and freedom candidate in 2 decades. I mean, it's just, at this point, I really do think he needs to have this conversation with Max Blumenthal. He's publicly invited him. And I've said this to you guys before. I have not seen him appear on any show that has a left audience. Any show that knows a lot, particularly about that issue, and will challenge him on it. Max knows a lot about this issue. He was there. Aaron knows a lot about this issue. They were there. They've been there. And they're both Jewish. Katie Halper knows a lot about this issue. And she's Jewish. You see what I'm saying? You're not seeing him have those conversations with those people. He ain't even got to come on here because that's not like my expertise. I'm still learning about it myself. But it's noticeable. And speaking of expertise, the Palestinian Network, they were the ones that kind of educated me to the fact that two-state solution is not viable. They were on again yesterday for our labor organizing summit. And I want to show you, I want you to hear from them. Now, here's Nick in Rome, and here's one of the members of the Palestinian Network. He's going to explain to you why this does not work. This was just yesterday. This is the second time they've come on RBN to break this down. So for those of you who may be confused or not sure about that issue, listen to what he is saying.
Same thing like with Palestine, like when I was earlier referring to the Netanyahu government, what is happening essentially right now, and this is yet to hit the public consciousness, but Palestinian analysts are talking about it in Arabic, is that there is a shadow state that is forming, of the right-wing nationalists in occupied Palestine. And they, because Israel does not have a concept, like Israel, first of all, we have to understand that Israel is expansionist. Like even on the Irgun, the terrorist org that I mentioned earlier, on their emblem, like their main emblem, they have it's not just Palestine, it's also Jordan, on the emblem. So they are interested, and this is also evidenced by, 48, when Sinai, the peninsula in Egypt, was occupied, when south of Lebanon was occupied. The Golan Heights, which belong to Syria, are still occupied. So their strategy is to expand beyond Palestine. They're not interested in just Palestine.
That part right there is very important for people to hear. It's not just about Palestine. So he is telling you, again, he is from the Palestinian Network. He is telling you that they're not just interested in Palestine. They're interested in territories outside of Palestine. So it's not going to stop there. This is the part that a lot of people are not talking about. And this is why when Nick and I interviewed Marianne Williamson, and Nick said, Marianne, when we talked to the Palestinian Network and she got upset and said, don't mansplain to me, I have Palestinian friends too. She didn't let Nick give him the opportunity to finish saying everything that he was saying, which is, yes, you do need to talk to this network because they break this down very well. It is not just about Palestine. And another damn thing I'm going to say and make very clear. A lot of people are also looking over the fact that there are also issues with Ethiopian Jews that are also there, and they're pushing them out too. It's not just about the Palestinians. And a lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of people don't. We played the videos on here, guys. The racism that they were going through. Let me let him finish because he's not done yet.
In beyond, Palestine, and so we know from the beginning that their project has failed, because they're limited to Palestine. But there is a right wing that is being emboldened right now within the ranks of Zionists, the hardcore right wing. A lot of them happen to be very religious and messianic. They're aligned also with Christian Zionists here in the U.S. because they believe that everything that they're doing will bring, the Messiah to return. But so effectively, there is a governance, like the 67, what is called the West Bank, is effectively governed under Smotrich, which is, the Israeli minister, I believe, for finance. So there is no such thing as two-state. There is no such thing as peace process. Even the PA, what we call the Palestinian Authority, is actually the most anti-Palestinian. I really respect Black folks, when they say not all skin folk are kinfolk. We have the same dilemma when it comes to Palestinian liberation.
You heard that? There is this whole idea of a two-state solution. You need to hear from people who understand. This is the thing, guys, there's too many settlements. He's letting you know there's no way. It will not work. So all these politicians running on, oh, yes, a two-state solution. This is how he educated me. Because I used to believe the same thing. Oh, yeah, two-state solution. I had to educate myself. I had to learn. I had to grow. I'm not ashamed to admit that. So people learn and they grow. But they educated me and made me understand, oh, my God, this is not possible. No, it's not. And you can't let it get to the point where you like a candidate so much that you are afraid to criticize them. And that I saw that happen with Bernie Sanders, and I saw that shit happen with Barack Obama. And I'm trying to tell you now, I know a lot of you do like RFK Jr. It's your call to like who you like, but don't let it get to the point where you like them so much that you can't criticize them where they are wrong. And on this particular issue, he is wrong. Let me let him finish here, and then I'll show you another piece.
Our leaders, Palestinian Authority, do not represent the aspirations of Palestinians for liberation. In fact, they are part of the Zionist entity, and they work.
That's a great point.
They do security coordination with the Zionist entity after Oslo, happened, which liquidated the Palestinian cause and Palestinian rights. So for Palestinians, there's a reason why Hamas wins elections. There's a reason, and it's because Hamas picks up armed resistance and moves with the people and does, work towards Palestinian aspirations of nationhood and self-determination.
There you go. Now you can see that full video if you want to see the rest of that conversation, because that's on RBN. That was yesterday. How do I get rid of the top chat back there? That was yesterday. The Labor Organizing Summit Part 2. That's the one that features Shama Sawant. So we broke that up into two different segments. So the summit was from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And this Part 2 started at 4 p.m. I'm on here somewhere later on in the summit. I talked to the UPS Teamsters yesterday. Now, shout out to Lucy, because Lucy also had some screenshots. Even some of RFK Jr. supporters are calling him out on this issue. Look at this. It's simple, RFK Jr., revise your position. Your own fans want you to. Here's Leon. He's so disappointing, but I guess I didn't know enough about him at first. Christine, so wrong. I wish he revealed all of this at the beginning, so I wouldn't have considered him as an option a few months back. You know what else was interesting? When I covered his announcement on the ground here in Boston, he didn't talk about this. I wonder why. I make sure I showed all the patrons. I got one more ticker to show. Okay. There's more. Alexander says, very disappointed with RFK Jr. bias and going out of his way to disregard justice for Palestinians, not trustful anymore. I hope someday RFK Jr. learned the truth from Miko Palid. Not long ago, RFK Jr. was seen as the only hope for America, but has shown that he's not like her father or uncle. Now, many are very disappointed that he cannot see reality and how much Palestinians have suffered. Another one. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has lost all credibility with me. I question all of his statements after such a shameful performance. Please know it just makes me nauseous. I really loved RFK. What in tarnation? For those who don't know, like tarnation is like a Southern. Some people say that down south. Like, what in tarnation? Bobby Bro says sickening. Barry says his Jenin statement is a huge disappointment. Blue Moon says these are your fans, RFK Jr. Revise your position. This is why he lost my vote and support. The only problem with your analysis, sir, is that it is an apartheid state. What else would you call it? I feel great admiration and loyalty to you on every issue so far, and because of the very person that you are, but we couldn't be further apart on this one. The Israelis have been carrying forth a smash and grab on Palestinian land for decades, a process that continues to this day. Palestine is the new Warsaw Ghetto, and it's shameful for the Jews to play the Nazi in this scenario, and shameful for you to support them in that, no matter how many Semite smears are thrown your way by despicable grifters in the Democratic Party. If the Dems succeed in keeping you in the dark on this one, then I can only surmise that they will succeed in keeping you away from the nomination as well. He has to come to his senses on Palestine and Israel. This is insanity. He will not get the votes. The majority of people do not support Israel's genocide of Palestinian people. Wake up, RFK Jr. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I don't have time to go through all of them, but there's a lot like that. If you have not had a chance to do so, smash that like button, guys. And then I'm just going to go ahead and check comments here. I want to make sure I got everybody's chat. Thank you, Marvin. Shmuley is RFK Jr.'s handler. Stay in line, get AIPAC money. Thanks, Frank. Did RFK just say that Israel was the only place in the Middle East that supports human rights? WTF. Kathy says, Sabby, did you see where dropped your name? I responded, go on her show. She has some concerns about Palestinians. Who? Sabby, did you see where dropped? I don't know what you mean, Kathy. I don't know what you mean. Marvin, all Palestinians killed call terrorists. 2-year-old killed Tamimi in Jenin, shot and killed in the head by IDF. Terrorist ? Thank you, Marvin. AIPAC influencing our election again, agents for Israel. JB says Israel is colonialist. Basically what the U.S. did to Guam, Samoa, Virgin Islands, Philippines. Good points, JB. Thank you, Webb. Isn't it interesting that RFK talks about the expansion of NATO over the years and not that of Israel? Hit me with it one more time. Webb, hit me with it one more time. Thank you. Yes, indeed. She's Black says, see, he actually knows exactly what he's doing. There you go. And thank you, Steve, for the super sticker. I am so sorry, Kathy Hun. Was it Kathy? Kathy, I don't know what you mean by this. Maybe email me and let me know. Did you see where dropped? Do you mean Wary? There's a friend of the show, Wary. You mean W-R-A-E? W-A-R-E, Wary? Is that who you mean? I have to check. I'm sorry, guys. All right, I'm just gonna check Rockfin comments, and then I'll be heading out because I know Diva'sDoodles is about to go live, and like I said, they're gonna go a lot deeper into that story I covered earlier. I probably should have just waited to cover that another time but I wanted to go ahead and get that story out there because I want more people to know about it. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Sab, they do this to both sides. They did it to the Herald Square bomber, the Black Lives Matter protester in Colorado, Occupy Cleveland in 2012. I DM'd you the link from Rolling Stone. PayPal just opened a new browser on our side, but also the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapped by white militia group case and the January with Ray Epps. But who they don't do it to is those committing white collar crime, devastating the world community. Yep. You're right about that one. That's who they choose not to do it to. All righty. Kathy, if you're still with me, can you email me? My email's in every description of the video, just because I want to make sure. Thank you for the super chat, Kathy. RFK Jr. dropped your name. Uh-oh. That can't be good. That can't be good. Well, thank you so much for the super chat, Kathy. I got a skadoodle. Stop, drop, and roll. Keep the peace, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.